Good morning, Primary 6. How are you today? Are you ready for our last concept at our curriculum? Let's start. As you know, Primary 6, our concept's name is called soil. But before knowing what does soil variety mean, we have to know what does soil mean. Simply, as you see in front of you, Primary 6, soil is the loose layer which covers the Earth's crust. So, loose layer means something like delicate skin, which cover our Earth crust. Okay, and also usually soil has different composition or it has different particles which is made from it, as the composition of soil differ from one place to another on the Earth's surface, as I'm having such a variety or such a different types of soil. The most three common types of soil are number 1, sand soil, silt soil, and clay soil. Again, number 1, sand soil, number 2, silt soil, number 3, clay soil. And as you see in front of you, each one of them has its own color and has its own particle size. As sand soil has such a yellow color, as you see, silt soil has such a gray color, and clay soil it's having such a dark color. And concerning about the particles, usually the sand particles are gonna be the largest one, while the silt particles it's gonna be medium particles. It's not as big as sand soil, or it's not as small as the clay soil. And now, Primary 6, if I ask you, do you think there is a relationship between the soil and environmental change? Think with me 1 minute, Primary 6. Super. I'm gonna find that there is such a strong relationship between the environmental change that happen at our environment and at the soil, Primary 6. How or what the relation between the soil and environmental change which happen? Simply, Primary 6, I'm gonna find that the environment varies according to the type of the soil in it, because the soil has an important role. It has such an important role to determine the type of plants that grow in this environment. And also, the type of the soil affect on the species of the animals which live inside this environment. And also, the environment by the reverse, or on the other hand, the environment affect the soil. How? If I ask you, do you think how the environment affect on our soil? Excellent, super, Primary 6. I'm gonna find that, for example, when the air temperature is very, very, very high in such an environment like the desert environment, I'm gonna find that the soil is gonna be very, very, very dry and completely drought. No nutrients is gonna be present at this soil because of the high temperature. So this is how the environmental change affect on the soil and how the soil affect on the environmental change. Continue talking about soil variety, Primary 6. I'm gonna find that I'm having such a differences and similarities between the different types of soil. Let's start with the similarities first. I'm gonna find that all the types of soil, if I'm talking about sand soil, if I'm talking about silt soil, if I'm talking about clay soil, each one of them, I'm gonna find that they are consisting of such a natural components. So it's considered as a similarity between all types of soil. And also, all types of soil, they keep the life on Earth. Okay, Primary 6? So, what about the differences between the different types of soil? Think with me. Super, Primary 6. I'm gonna find that each soil has its own character, has its own color, and has its own texture also. Super, Primary 6. And also the size of the soil particles differ from one type to type, as I'm having the largest particles which is found in sand soil, super, Primary 6, and the smallest one I'm gonna find it at the clay soil, super, Primary 6. As here, Primary 6, we can summarize the differences between the three types of soils as in the form of points of comparison. As number 1, if I'm talking about the size of particles, which means also grainities, Primary 6, I'm gonna find that sand soil having the largest particles, while silt soil it's having medium-sized particles, while clay soil it's having the smallest particles. This is concerning about size of particles. For example, if I'm talking about the color, I'm gonna find that sand soil it's having yellow color and it's very clear and simple. Silt soil having gray color, while clay soil having dark or black, completely black color. Excellent, primary 6. If I'm talking about flowing of water through it, I'm gonna find that the sand soil allow more water to move through it. So the movement of water is gonna be very, very fast. Super, primary 6. While silt soil, it has such a medium flowing of water. While clay soil, it's having such a slow, very, very, very slow flowing of water. Okay, and the last point, primary 6, which is retaining or saving of water. I'm gonna find that sand soil, it can save such a lot of water. So retaining or saving water is gonna be very small at the sandy soil. While silt soil, saving or retaining of water is gonna be medium. And clay soil, it's gonna have, or it's gonna save the most amount of water because it's not having such a poor spaces, or it's not having such a large poor spaces between its particles. While concerning about sand soil, it's having such a large spaces between its particles. And now, primary 6, we're gonna remember with each other some basic information all of us already known it about the soil. As for example, number 1, I'm gonna find that the soil is the basic factor for all the natural ecosystems on Earth. And also, the soil is formed from different ingredients or different components like sand, gravel, minerals, which are formed due to breaking down of rocks by a process called weathering process, super, primary 6. And also the soil consists of some living organisms, as many living organisms take the soil as a shelter or as a home to live inside it, like some worms and some insects, super, primary 6. And also the soil consists of organic materials and consists of water. Now, primary 6, we're gonna talk about two important points related to the soil, which is number 1, composition of soil, and number 2, importance of soil. If you want to talk about composition of soil, so if I ask you, do you think what are the components of soil? I'm gonna find that the soil is just a mixture of different materials. As if you examine such a sample from the soil by using your hand lens or by using your hand, you're gonna notice or you're gonna find the presence of small rocks and small pieces of leaves and small pieces of twigs, which means branches of trees, and other dark colored materials. All of these materials, they're gonna form the soil. And also I'm having other components of soil that can't be seen by your naked eye. You have to use such a microscope to see them. Okay, so talking about the importance of the soil, if I ask you, do you think the soil is important for us as a living organism, primary 6? Surely, super, primary 6. Soil is very important for the plants that the people and the animal feed on to survive, and also soil provides or gives us the basic needs for growth, as soil definitely contains water, air, nutrients, which are used by plant to make photosynthesis process, super, primary 6. And also soil is the home for many living organisms, as we said before. And now, primary 6, from all what we said, we can summarize or we can say that all types of soil consist of just only two components, which are super, primary 6. Number 1, organic materials and inorganic materials. Organic materials, primary 6, means living organisms or living components which are found inside the soil, like number 1, dead plants and animals. Excellent, super, primary 6. While talking about inorganic materials, inorganic, primary 6, means non-living thing or non-living components. So non-living or inorganic materials are the non-living components or the non-living things which are found inside the soil. Give me examples on the inorganic materials. Super, inorganic materials means non-living things. So non-living things as air, water, rocks, and minerals. And minerals, by the way, are the building units which form the rocks. Super, primary 6. And now, primary 6, let's see how the organic materials of the soil can be formed. First of all, I'm gonna find that the most important factor in the formation of organic materials which form the soil are the decomposers organisms, primary 6. Decomposers organisms are the living organisms, primary 6, which can't be seen by your naked eye. They are present inside the soil as number 1, fungi, bacteria, and earthworm. as they are playing just an important role in the formation of soil. As number one, they keep the balance of ecosystem as they clean up the environment by decomposing the dead bodies or the dead organisms which are found inside the soil. And also, after they decompose their bodies, they return it back into the natural chemical nutrients that they are consisting of, like carbon, nitrogen, and oxygen, and they release them back into the soil. So it's gonna help in the flowing of energy in the environment again. And also, decomposers break down the organic material of dead organisms into components which are gonna reach in humus. Humus means the organic material which is found inside the soil. And by increasing the amount of humus inside the soil fertility is gonna increase also. And now, primary 6, let's see how the inorganic materials, primary 6, wake up with me, not organic materials. Now, I'm talking about inorganic materials, how they are formed inside the soil. I'm gonna find primary 6 that the inorganic materials of the soil are formed from 3 main processes, which are number 1, weathering for the rocks, and then erosion, and then deposition. So what does each one of them mean? Super primary 6. Weathering, as we took it at primary 4, if you remember, and if you're not remembering, we are gonna say it again here. So weathering process means breaking down of rocks into smaller and smaller and smaller pieces known as sediments. Sediments may be like sand, silt, clay, which happen by the effect of water, by the effect of wind, maybe also. So this is what does the word weathering mean. So number 1, the first step is gonna be weathering. Number 2, erosion, which means moving of these sediments from one place to another to be deposited in it. So number 3, deposition, means deposition of these small pieces of rocks and mixing them with another gradients, forming a new type of soil in a new place. This is the meaning of the 3 words primary 6, weathering, erosion, and deposition. As primary 6, different soils means different ingredients. As we said before, each soil has its own composition and has its own characteristics. So, the difference in size of particles and the amount of different inorganic materials at primary 6 may lead to change, number 1, in the appearance and texture of the soil, and also change in the ability of soil to retain or to keep water, and also it may cause change in the ability of soil to allow roots to grow through it. And also, on the other side, the difference in the amount of organic material or organic ingredients in the soil may lead to, number 1, changing in the appearance of the soil, and also change in the amount of nutrients that's available for the plant. And by the way, if I note or if I take a sample from the soil primary 6 and examine it under the microscope, I'm gonna find that half of the soil consists of minerals and organic materials, as we know. So the minerals and organic materials, as we know, represent just only half of the soil, while the other half of the soil consists of spaces, just only spaces between the particles of the soil. And these spaces, we are gonna call it pore spaces. Pore spaces, where each pore primary 6 is gonna be filled with water and air. This is a very important part, by the way. Pore spaces, they are the spaces between the particles of the soil, and they represent half of the soil. And now, primary 6, as we said before, that soil is formed from many layers. It's not just only one layer, as it consists of many layers under each other. As the soil affects the climate of the ecosystem, if I ask you how the soil has such a big effect on the ecosystem, as number 1, if I told you that the type of plant that grow in a certain area or in a certain soil have a large impact or have a large effect on the temperature and on the weather of the ecosystem. And also the climate of any ecosystem affect the characteristics of the soil in it. And also the climate, primary 6, of any ecosystem affect the characteristics which is found inside the soil. And now, primary six, let's talk about two examples on the ecosystems which depend on the soil. As number one, I'm gonna talk about humid areas and hot, dry areas. From their names, primary six, humid areas means the area with a lot of water, and hot, dry area simply means the area which have no water or not as much as water as the humid areas. So during falling of the rain inside the humid areas, primary six, I'm gonna find that the soil of the humid area is gonna retain or keep large amount of water through it. And this large amount of water, some minerals may fall below the soil layers, and this will form such a hard layer under the plant root that the plant root cannot penetrate it because of the large water. Super primary six. And also, if I note some humid areas, I'm gonna find that if the soil having such a large amount of water falling from the rainfall, the soil it's gonna become water-lodged. Water-lodged soil means that the soil contain very large amount of water and very little amount of air. And this doesn't help the roots of the plant to grow and living organisms to survive in these soils. This is concerning about humid areas, primary six. While hot dry areas, in such hot and dry areas, soil which is rich with, for example, clay soil is the most common example on hot dry areas. Clay soil, I'm gonna find that the clay becomes very, very, very dry because of drought conditions. Super. And these drought conditions, primary six, also will form a hard layer that doesn't allow much water to flow through it. The most common example on dry soil primary six are the savanna, which are a grassland ecosystem that contains such a dry sandy soil, and they are very common in Central Africa. As the sand soil is very dry and loose that drains water quickly, which means that allow water to pass through it quickly, so large trees cannot grow in it. And also the living organisms, primary six, which live inside the savanna, depend on each other in feeding. As savanna contain, as you know, variety of grasses and small plants. Who's gonna eat savanna and these small grasses? Super primary six. They're gonna be eaten by some herbivores. Herbivores as some gazelles or deers. Super primary six. And also, who's gonna eat the herbivores? Super carnivores are gonna eat the herbivores. Carnivores are the lions, tigers, cheetah, leopard. Super primary six are the living organisms which can eat another living organism, while herbivores are the living organisms which just eat only grasses. Super primary six. And now we're gonna talk more about the clay soil. The clay soil, which is rich with clay particles, it can retain or it can keep much more water very well. So the soil, do you think it's gonna be very dry or very wet? Super primary six is gonna be very wet most of the time, as most of the plants that grow in this wet soil are considered as a basic plants for the bug ecosystem. So bug ecosystem consists of clay soil, and also the moist conditions in bugs, it also leads to very cool temperatures. So the temperature is gonna be all over the year cool temperature, and this helps most animals to live in bug ecosystems, as some frogs and some mosquitoes, as you see in front of you. And now primary six, let's see how the soil impact the earth ecosystem, or how the soil affects on the earth as a system. As you know, in front of you, I'm having such a two ways which can be negatively affect on the soil. As for example, number one, deplete the soil, which means overusing of the soil. As number one, deplete for the soil may happen because of, number one, overuse of pesticides. If I use such a lot of pesticides to the soil, it's gonna be a big negatively effect on the soil. As number two, converting such a fertile agricultural lands into cities, factories, or pastures, it's gonna negatively affect on the soil. And also overuse for the chemical fertilizers and air and water pollution. All of these can be considered as a causes or reasons which cause deplete for the soil. And also I'm having another way which is called desertification. Desertification from its name means, remember with me primary 6, desertification. Desertification means increasing the number of deserts, super primary 6, which may happen because of deforestation or drought or overgrazing. And these three important words are very important reasons for the happening of desertification, primary 6. So don't confuse. Desertification may happen because of deforestation, drought, or overgrazing. As all of us already know that nearly half of the agriculture land or soil on earth has been lost in the last 150 years. As the desert area around the world, unfortunately, they are increasing very quickly, as about 38% of the earth's land becomes very, very, very dry because of desertification. And now, primary 6, if I ask you, do you think there is any way to restore the soil? Think with me 1 minute. Again, the question again. If I ask you, do you think if there is any way for the soil restoration? Surely there's gonna be a hope, as number one, scientists primary 6 can restore the soil by different ways, as they may add nutrients which have been depleted or finished back to the soil. As number one, they can add the straw and stem or stalks, and also they can add the natural fertilizers as animal manure. They can also use a very good way which is called crop diversification. Crop diversification primary 6 means planting different types of crops all over the soil, not only planting one type of the soil, and also rotating them with crops that keep the soil fertility. While factors, I'm having such two factors, very important factors which can affect the quality of the crop. As number one, quality of the crop may be affected by the regular and moderate irrigation, planting of the crops at a suitable time or at a specific time. And number two, adding suitable amount of organic fertilizers. Super primary 6, as unfortunately if I didn't do or if I didn't make the past two or the following two factors which are gonna affect on the crop quality, unfortunately the plants will be produced will be very weak, and number two, the amount of crops will be very, very, very little, and unfortunately diseases may be spread among the plants. And now primary 6, do you remember erosion process, weathering, erosion, deposition, as we said before? Super primary 6, erosion means moving of sediments from one place to another. So if I ask you primary 6, do you think what are the reasons or the most common reasons of soil erosion? I'm gonna find that the type of soil is gonna be such a big reason for the soil erosion. And number two, removing of plants may be considered as a big reason for soil erosion, and also increasing the amount of water and increasing for the inclination or slope of the earth, like as you see in front of you at this picture, it's called earth's inclination or slope of the earth. Okay. All of these factors, primary 6, may lead to increasing the speed of moving water all over the Earth's surface, and so the soil particles are washed away by moving water down, causes soil erosion. And now, primary 6, you have to know that soil erosion, if it's increased more than its normal limit, it's not gonna be such a good thing at all. So we have to reduce soil erosion as much as we can. And here are some ways to increase to reduce soil erosion. As number one, I have to increase the planted areas to reduce or to decrease primary 6 soil erosion. And number two, I have to dig canal or trenches to collect the excess water in soil. And also I have to add some sand and silt to the soil, which help in decreasing the effect of moving water all over the soil. And now, primary 6, let's now remember the word habitat, or what does the word habitat mean? We have already heard it before many times. As habitat, primary 6, simply, super, say with me, the place where all living organisms live. As, for example, forest, it can be considered as a habitat, ocean, desert, grassland, and also stream. All of these are considered as a habitat. So, again, habitat is the place which provide, number one, food, water, shelter, and space to live for the living organism. So any area which provide these four factors or these four things for the living organism to live, I can call it habitat. And also primary six, in any habitat, if one of these four previous things or factors is depleted or finished, it may cause a habitat destruction suddenly. And also any change, even a small one, it can cause a large reaction for the habitat. And now primary six, if I ask you, do you think habitat destruction may happen for any habitat or not? Surely it may be happen, and it also has two reasons for the happening of the habitat destruction. So habitat destruction primary six may be happen because of natural changes or because of human activities. Natural changes like primary six volcanic eruptions, like earthquakes, like hurricanes or fires which happen inside the forests, floods, completely drought, any of these natural things, I can call it natural change which causes a habitat destruction. So also diseases of living organisms, it can also cause a habitat destruction. Also the lack of food for many living organisms, it may be considered as a natural change which causes habitat destruction. And also some of these natural changes have cycles in nature. And for example, while on the other hand, human activities, I can do things which negatively affect on the habitat. Yes, unfortunately, I can make a lot of things which causes habitat destruction. As for example, the human population grows. As by increasing the number of population, people make many changes in their habitat to get their needs. As for example, they have to build more houses, they have to build more factories to produce goods, and they have also to produce or to build such a strong infrastructure. Infrastructure means primary six, such as strong roads, such as strong railway tracks for transportation. And this is the meaning of the word infrastructure. And primary six, now, although natural changes can cause habitat destruction, it may cause also some benefits. As for example, the volcanic eruptions which happen naturally, it sometimes can make the soil be more fertile. And also the forest fires which happen naturally, it can also release the seeds from the closed fruits. It can cause its releasing from its fruits. And also the diseases of living organisms which happen, it can also be considered as a good way, as it sometimes keeps the population of animals to a suitable number that can be controlled in an ecosystem. And now primary six, the human activities also which happen that I already made it can cause unfortunately many harms to the habitat. As for example, the natural spaces at the hills and prairies and valleys are completely turned into factories and homes that lead to deforestation. Excellent means removing of the forest to make these buildings, and it's not gonna be a good thing at all. And also lands have been destroyed for mining or extracting of metals from underground and making roads and airport runways. Super primary six. And also from the human activities which negatively affect on the environment, or the pollution and the waste produced by human have led to an increase in the percentage of carbon dioxide gas in air. And when the percentage of carbon dioxide gas increased in air, this leads to an increase in the Earth's temperature. Super primary six. And now primary six, I want you to know that from all what we said before, any climate change which happen may cause a habitat destruction, but the living organisms happen in this area or at this part of the ecosystem, they can be adapted to survive to the environmental change that happen. So if they succeeded to adapt, they will survive. But unfortunately, if they didn't succeed to survive, they will extinct. So the living organisms are gonna have two options. Either they're gonna survive or adapt to survive, so they will stay alive, or if they didn't do any way, or if they didn't do anything to survive, they unfortunately will extinct. And now, primary six, let's talk about overpopulation, which means super increase in the number of certain species of living organisms in a habitat. And this increase, primary six, may lead to struggling or fighting for food, water, and also space. So the living organisms are gonna fight for food, they're gonna fight for water, and they're gonna fight for shelter. So overpopulation is not gonna be such a good thing at all. And I'm also having two reasons which may cause overpopulation, which are number one, natural changes and human activities. For example, how can the natural change may cause overpopulation? As for example, if there is no suddenly disappearance of large predators, if it's happened. For example, if large predator disappear suddenly from an area, so this leads to an increasing in the number of prey. So if the number of preys increase more than the normal limit, they're gonna start fight with each other about food, about water, about space. So it's not gonna be a good thing at all. And also, the human activities may cause overpopulation, as for example, when new species are brought or are introduced by human into a new area, it leads to forming of an invasive species. So this species became invasive, as which may kill off native plants and animals that already live in this area. An example, we have very important example on invasive species, which is found in the area of the Red Sea. It's called lionfish, which is the reason for the loss or for the dying of 79% of young fish of the native species population. And now, primary six, if I ask you, do you think you're gonna be able to drink from this water if I introduce this water to you? Unfortunately, no. Why? Because this water is very, very, very impure or very dirty. So, I have to reduce water pollution, primary six. And the most important way to reduce water pollution is that applying the law, strict up or set up rules or laws, which is going to be the most effective way to prevent water pollution. As number one, give me examples on the laws that can be introduced. As number one, I can set up a law which say that I have to treatment of sewage and industrial water, and also I have to keep green areas. Excellent. This is from the most common examples about reducing water pollution. And also number three, primary six, I have to use a suitable amount of fertilizers, and also I have to get rid of trash in the correct ways, which is the most important law that should be applied. And number five, using soil fences and sedimentation ponds. It's going to be such a good way to reduce water pollution. And also controlling air pollution, which produced from cars and industry, can reduce water pollution. From all what we said, primary six, preventing water pollution is going to be more effective than cleaning up the water that has been already polluted. So setting up a rule from the beginning to prevent water pollution, it's going to be more effective. And now, primary six, let's talk about the traditional bricks. As humans, like all living organisms, need shelter to survive, but unfortunately, the process of making building materials such as traditional bricks can cause a lot of pollution which damage the environment. So soil scientists and engineers hope to stop depending on traditional bricks and concrete, and they harm the environment very badly, as the bricks must be burned at more than 1000 degrees Celsius, and also the ingredients of cement must be burned at 1450 degrees Celsius. So manufacturing or making of bricks and cement requires such a lot of energy, and it takes also a lot of time, and also it produces a lot of pollution. So scientists use the soil to build sustainable homes, as they transform the soil into building materials, and they added some chemicals to the soil that turn the clay of the soil, especially the clay of the soil, into substance look like glue substance, which bind materials together. And also this glue-like substance made by chemical change of the soil. But the scientists at this process use the subsoil, and they didn't use the topsoil, which is the first layer of the soil. So again, scientists use here the subsoil, which is under the topsoil. So they didn't use the topsoil, which is the first layer of the soil. So they use the subsoil, which is found under the topsoil, which is available on the Earth's surface. And the new substance is used to build sustainable homes instead of traditional bricks. Here is the end primary 6. I hope you enjoyed and understood the concept well. Thank you.